Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bencivenga, and welcome to Facts Over Fear. We've got a great show for you today. So, last month, over 7 million people gathered for the National Day of Action, No King's Day. Massive protests that were advocating for the freedom to speak to truth, power, and the obligation to speak out against a would-be tyrant. Now, tomorrow, on May 1st, a new mission is coming into focus with Workers Over Billionaires, a national day of action. Workers, students, families, all people will march, rally, walk, or take action together to demand that the United States government tax the rich, abolishes ICE, stops the war in Iran, and expands democracy and human rights instead of corporate rule. As many as 3,000 events are anticipated across all 50 states, building on more than 1,300 May Day actions last year. Here joining me to discuss this and more is Sarah Parker. She is the national spokesperson for the 5051 and executive director of Voices of Florida and the Voices of Florida Fund. Thanks so much for being here and joining me again, Sarah. It's always nice to see a familiar face.
Thank you. I'm so super excited to be here to talk about this. I'm definitely with everything that happened yesterday. This is how I would like to end my work day on Thursday. So thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I always enjoy our conversations. Before we do get into the chaos that was the news cycle of yesterday, I want to talk a little bit about the events, and then we're going to lead into why this is the moment for workers to unite. Can you do a little bit of a deeper dive for us into some of the demands that are being anchored by all of the labor and the community organizations for this day of action? And there's over 500 of them, I believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Right now, some of the biggest things is ending the war in Iran. I think that's super important right now because that is taking working class people, working class families, and they're sending their daughters, their sons, the people that they love over to fight a war for a despot. I'm not going to call him a tyrant. He's a despot. An authoritarian regime that was not even approved by Congress. And then also taxing the billionaires. I think we've been saying that for a very long time. Everyone has been saying that for a very long time. There are mothers that are working 40-hour weeks that can't afford daycare, and we can't even tax people that have 10 houses, that have private planes. This is a problem. This is a problem in the United States of America. And if we were to tax those people, we could have like free school lunches. That's a crazy thought process, right? When we're defunding the Department of Education. Um, Another one is just generally workers' rights. I know like the unions are really unions always are pushing that. I think about states in Florida that is a right to work state, right? That's so problematic because people abuse and use that system. And the authoritarian regime, I think like looping that into it, I'm not a part of a union. And I'm coming to you as an everyday person. Um Kind of looping into like this is a pushback against the authoritarian regime. This is a pushback against masked men, right?
Yes.
Kidnapping our neighbors in broad daylight, killing American citizens in 4K in broad daylight. And I want to be like crystal clear around that. The immigration system has been broken for decades, and Democrats and Republicans both have consistently failed us.
Yeah.
And the solution was never masked men that had barely any training killing our neighbors. It's just not right. So, those are the highlight things. And I think also now, I was on a press conference yesterday and it was it was a few hours after the Clay's decision. So now we're asking people to mobilize around that, mobilize around voting rights access, mobilize and stand for the people that died for VRA. So those are like a few and one of the things I know 5051 is pushing for is that we want to see this. We want to dream bigger. We're tired of being on opposition. On offense. On defense. We want to be on offense. We want a reconstruction of the Supreme Court. It's not working. It's failed. We have to think radical, like more radical than what we already have, or we're going to wind up in the same position. I think complacency got us here. We have to continue to dream. We have to continue to fight. And tomorrow is working this muscle that, we have atrophy because of our complacency.
Yeah.
Like this muscle is atrophy. But historically, going back to the bread and roses or the 20,000 uprising, doing economic pressure campaigns have always worked. It's always worked. It's in the playbook. Right? They utilize it. Look at Budweiser. They utilize it. So we need to utilize it. So what Mayday is asking for is one of the things. You don't have to do all of them. We know that people cannot do all of them, but let's work one of those muscles. Don't go to school. don't go to work or just don't buy anything and come out and take the streets.
Period. No, I love that. And I think that's a really important point is that there is an entry point into basically the revolution, the resistance, however we want to frame it right now, because not all of us can do everything, but everyone can do something. And I think Spencer Gray, he wanted to comment here. He said, I'm digging this. We're overdue for a revolution, hit them from all angles. And that's really the point. Like, to your point, it's not going to be just one thing that works because so many things right now, Sarah, are on fire. And you touched on one, and I want to expand on it. I'm looking at an article from the AP. It says Louisiana congressional primaries are suspended as a result of the Supreme Court's ruling. I just want to read a graph so people can get up to speed here. Because everything's changing in real time so quickly, Louisiana suspended its congressional primaries yesterday, Thursday, or excuse me, today is Thursday, as early, I don't even know what day it is, you guys. It has been
Right?
that kind of a week. Listen, as early voting was about to get underway while pressure mounted on Republican officials in other states to also redraw their U.S. House maps in light of a Supreme Court ruling that significantly weakened, and I think that's being polite, the Voting Rights Act. What I find really interesting about what you said, Sarah, is I think a classic problem that the Democrats, let's say the establishment Democrats have, they have a really hard time with the word radical. And instead, what we have seen over and over and over again on the right, they have no problem with radical. They just don't frame it as that word because destroying the Voting Rights Act, which is what basically the bought and paid for, billionaire bought and paid for Supreme Court did yesterday, is a radical thing to do. Can you talk a little bit about what the hell is going on in Louisiana and what should voters know if there's anybody from Louisiana that might watch this?
Yeah, so they have suspended primary elections. As far as we understand from the groups that I've been talking to, this is unprecedented. It's never happened. They haven't even announced when they're planning on having primary. But there is still an election happening, and I'm pretty sure Saturday you can still go out and vote. There are still things to vote on. There's a lot of misinformation swirling around. So if you know anyone in Louisiana, tell them to go vote. Tell them
Mm.
they have to continue to vote. What they don't want you to do is use your voice. That is why they're saying they canceled. And you hear the word cancel an election. That means, okay, well, I can't vote. No, you can. So get out there, make sure you're voting. And again, like this is like Louisiana. Tennessee just came out and said that they're going to that I believe it's like a 50% chance that
Mm.
they will redistrict by November. I want to say no before August, and 100% chance it'll be before next year. So we are looking at all the states start to come together. And I want to be super clear. The way that this happened was strategic. It was
Mhm.
diabolically strategic because I was watching, I've been part of the redistricting fight in Florida, and I sat on the
Mhm.
steering committee of the groups that were doing redistricting fight. And like my team went up there. So my team was up there for a day and we all came back. I remember sitting in this exact place and I'm watching the House start to debate on redistricting. I call it dummy mandering Florida against the Florida Constitution.
Mm.
Right? Because we are not allowed to have partisan maps. And within 20 or 30 minutes into debate, the Clay and Louisiana versus Clay decision drops. So like that is a big thing. We're trying to make sure that we're pushing people out there, not only because this was a static mobilization that we already planned. Now this is a rapid response moment. This is a moment for us to go out and take the streets and talk about this because we have a long fight and people keep saying our democracy is slipping through our fingers. The democracy is almost on the floor. Like it is
Yeah.
broken. We're going to have to pick it back up and rebuild, but we have to dream bigger and we have to be on offense, no longer defense. So May Day again is working that muscle so we can get on offense, so we can know what we can do to actually change things. And we cannot rebuild the same system we had. It's failed. It's failing. It's failed. This was a proven point that it has failed, and it has gutted. And I'm sorry, I just want to add that because
No,
we're
no,
like this
please.
weekend. It has gutted the work of people, Black people, brown people, white people in the South, the work that they have done for decades. It gutted it. It is a shell of what it was. And we have to, for people that say that they stood with Black Lives Matter, they changed their profile picture black. Like if you did all those things, we need you out in the streets tomorrow. We need you out in the streets. We need you talking about it with your family. This is a huge alarm right now.
It's a five-alarm fire. I couldn't agree more, and I appreciate that perspective. I also want to add that The Independent is reporting on this and saying that AOC is calling for more Democrat-leaning states to redraw election maps after the GOP, or excuse me, after the Supreme Court ruling and the GOP push. The Democratic caucus has tried to pass nonpartisan gerrymandering for 10 years, she told The Independent. Republicans have rejected it, and so we all now have to abide by the same rules. So she's really saying at this point, fight fire with fire. Do you think it's time for the Democrats, or has it been long past that they sort of get in the game in this way and be more direct in their actions? Or do you think that continues to be a reactive space?
That's reactive, and not only is that reactive, like, I think that there's a level of fighting fire with fire. I think
Hmm.
in that, like, we're not the goal is I like, in a nonpartisan way, don't burn the entire house down because your room's on fire,
Mm,
right? One of the things you're doing is if you continue to do this, at what point will the voters even matter? Everyone's just gonna choose who their voters are.
I know.
They're just gonna choose who their voters are on both sides.
Right.
This is problematic. Redistricting should happen for population dense areas that are representative of the spaces. Like, Tampa should not be aligned with the Crystal River, and I don't know if you know the difference, but those are hella different places. It's
Okay.
different.
I'll take your word for
Yeah.
it.
So, like, I am not a political analyst. I am not a map drawer, even though I know a lot of people are pretending that they are in this time. I'm not. I don't know if I love that. As a personal
Mhm.
opinion, I can't speak for the movement, I can't speak for
Sure.
Megan. As of my own personal opinion, I don't know if I love that because we are then still going to continue to dilute voices. And the goal is our democracy is to represent everyone in America. I don't care if I don't like you. I think you should still vote. I like to tell people, even when they get angry at their opposition or they get angry at what everyone's doing, is that you are still fighting for your neighbors. When
Mhm.
you fight for abortion rights, you're fighting for your neighbors to have abortion rights too.
Mm.
When you're fighting for voting rights, you're fighting for them too. So like I don't think that's the solution, in my
I
opinion.
I really appreciate that, and that's why I asked because I think we are in a state of disarray on the left. No matter how you sort of identify, if you're not in line with MAGA or and their beliefs, I think a lot of people either feel disillusioned or politically homeless. And so I'm always curious as to how people are feeling who are really steeped in these movements and in these spaces of understanding. And your perspective makes a lot of sense. I also wanted to acknowledge some of the posters behind you. And the reason I want to shout these out a little bit is I really appreciate the framing because this is what I talk a lot about on my show. When we use the words and the semantics of the opposition, you inherently lose the argument because you're allowing them to frame it in a way that suits them. But saying things like stop forced pregnancy, that really hits in a different way than perhaps some of the framework that we've heard in the past. Can you talk a little bit about the movement to bodily autonomy as it relates to these larger actions with 5051 and the labor movements and the workers versus billionaires? Where does bodily autonomy fit into that?
I mean, it's all intersectional. I get in trouble all the time as my little nonprofit when I talk to people. They're like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Here are all the things." We started as a repro organization, Voices of Florida Fund and Voices of Florida. It's all intersectional.
Mhm.
Workers' rights, like when we think, so I could go into a whole thing. You might have to have me on this for another day, but I'm going to try to do this really quick. When we think about reproductive justice was a term coined by Black women after there was a break between the feminist movement,
Mhm.
right? And it's about not only having access to abortion, it's about being able to raise your child in a safe environment. It's about Black maternal mortality rate not
Mhm.
being sky high, right? Being able to go have a child as a Black woman and know that my rate of dying is the same as my white counterparts, right?
Mhm.
But when we start breaking those things down, that means it has access to medical and healthcare. You can't have access to medical and healthcare if you don't have workers' rights and you don't have a living wage. Okay, and then we go further. That means you want your child to be able to grow up in a sustainable environment. Well, you can't do that when the Department of Education is being defunded. They can't even eat at school. And you continue to go further and further. And all that goes back to also taxing the billionaires. If we tax the billionaires, we could probably make sure that people have access to daycare. For all the people that want to continue forced pregnancy or that are anti-abortion, um, what about the people, and I know that that's such a silly, I hate using that term, but what about the people that are still like, what about the children that are living? And I want to be clear, a pregnancy is not a living child, first off, and people say that. But the living children, you don't care about at all because you won't even give them free lunches or free daycare. They're cutting ELC. So, and then we go even further. The billionaires are funding the politicians that are banning abortion. So, like
Hmm.
all of this, and we go into immigrant rights, right? There are people I know specifically that we've had to reach out to that are undocumented. They are afraid to go to the health department. So, I have a whole closet full of Plan B and oat pill to be able to give them free birth control. All of this is intersectional, and that's all of us are under attack. Our trans community, right? That's medical. That's medical. All of these things are under attack right now. And this is what we call like flooding the zone. They are
Hmm.
doing that. And
That's right.
when you don't see like the whole thing with the VRA, it might be shiny to us political weirdos, but like to normal everyday people, yeah, I call it all anyone that I'm like talking to is like you're a political weirdo. We can have a conversation with this, you're a political weirdo. Everyday people don't understand what is happening because we keep pointing to the shiny thing. And the shiny thing is a distraction in some ways. It's not, and it is. And we're not pointing to the thing that actually has this rippling effect, this crazy domino effect. I remember saying yesterday, right after during the May Day press call, like right afterwards, I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And by 10 o'clock last night, Louisiana, Tennessee, all these news articles started popping up. Um, so it's all intersectional. It's all very intersectional.
Yeah. If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bencavanga. You're watching Facts Over Fear. I'm with Sarah Parker, national spokesperson for 5051 and executive director of Voices of Florida and Voices of Florida Fund. Uh, Sarah, this workers over billionaires, this is a little bit of a departure from the No Kings Day. Can you talk a little bit about the difference in messaging and why the focus is coming into workers over billionaires as opposed to the No Kings of yesterday?
Yeah, I think, it's just a different coalition. There's
Hmm.
so many people in this big fight, right?
Hmm.
And lots see 5051 or indivisible or just our big labor friends. And the reality is like we're not the only ones moving behind the scenes. So this
Hmm.
is a different coalition with like Chicago's Teachers Union, 5051, and a bunch of other amazing partners that are mobilizing this. Um, and that is like that is important because we're all pieces to the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that we're moving away from No Kings. This is an addition to No Kings, right?
Mhm.
Last year we had Mayday. This is an addition to No Kings. This is a work of the muscle atrophy that we've had. And No Kings is also a mobilization. This is just the next step. We call it an escalation, right? So we've been
Mhm.
mobilized. We practiced that muscle even last Mayday. We've been mobilizing for a year now. Cool. Now we did the we ain't buying it campaign. Little bit we pushed a little bit. Cool.
Mhm.
And the Spotify campaign, the Disney campaign. Cool. Now we're gonna ask for everyone one day to choose one thing. We did the high school walkouts during Ice
Yep.
Out for Good. Now we're gonna try to put it in all one day, and we're gonna see what people can do. You don't have to have this massive million-person movement to create change. It if you can I always say, if you can change one person's mind in one day, or you can teach one person a new skill, then you're successful. I don't care if you're in a rural area or not. You have one sign and one more person joining you, and there's two people in a rural area, you're successful. So
Mm.
this is a ramp up. This is an attack to the pillars, that hold up their white ivory towers.
When we talk about, you had mentioned sort of this flooding of the zone, and I get a lot of DMs all day long from people that are in total panic. They're feeling incredibly hopeless. They're feeling helpless. A lot of, Natalie, I'm just going to move out of the country, or there's no hope, or the AI movement is going to destroy us. Like it's a constant bombardment, and I remind people we got to practice our resiliency muscle. We've got to lean into real life community. We've got to build, and that these things take time. This didn't all fall apart overnight, and it's not going to be reimagined or rebuilt in a way that reflects the values of people first policies overnight. But what do you say to people that are saying to you, well, none of this matters. They're going to do what they want. It doesn't matter what I say or what I do. I can't make a difference. I don't have this kind of money or influence. What do you like to tell them?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Um, so I was just in Belgium. We were speaking about not only the 5051 movement, No Kings in Florida, on the left of the EU Parliament. Um, and before me, I had these lovely colleagues, and a lot of them talked about how they left. And then I got on, and I was like, I understand, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the moment everyone leaves, first off, it's a privilege. If you can leave, you are acting in a privileged way, and what I
Mm-hmm.
offer people is you need to start foregoing your privilege. If you're not getting uncomfortable, I have it tattooed on me. Comfort is the killer of growth. If
Mm.
you are not foregoing your comfort, you are being complacent.
Yeah.
So like letting go of privilege is uncomfortability, but that breeds growth, right?
Hmm.
Um, I don't have that privilege. My community doesn't have the privilege. The people that you love probably don't have that privilege to leave. And with you goes power, knowledge, education, and your ideas. All of those things go with you when you leave.
Hmm.
And if you imagine all of the people that have that privilege leaving, it leaves a community that is marginalized, but does not have that power, does not have that education, that does not have that privilege. And you're leaving them in a disaster zone. So that's A. B, one thing I say to people, and it's something I had to tell myself even yesterday, because it was really hard yesterday and to not feel
Yeah.
hopeless and helpless. And I cried. And I don't get
Hmm.
angry in my organizing spaces, but even some of the 5051 chapters saw me get angry. And I was like, I'm
Hmm.
upset. I don't know what to tell you to do. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
And Albert Camus, and I think I said that right, Camus, one of his quotes, I'd found it forever ago. I didn't even know who wrote it. And I had to go back and look at it because I was like, let me make sure I'm not quoting some crazy white man, right? Um,
Fair enough.
A man devoid of hope and conscious of being has ceased to belong to the future.
Mm.
This future is mine, it's yours, it's
Mhm.
ours, it's our children, and it's the generations that will come after us. And
Yes.
then I like to think about and go back to Harriet Tubman.
Mhm.
Harriet Tubman left the South multiple times, but she was safe in Canada during the civil rights. I'm not the civil
Mhm.
rights, I'm sorry, during the Civil War. She was safe
Mhm.
in Canada. She did not
Mhm.
have to come back. She came back to fight for her country.
Mm.
She came back to fight for the people that she loved.
Mm.
I think about the people that had crosses burned outside of their house. Someone asked me the other day, "Do you feel safe?" And I was like, I don't. First, I was a Black woman and stuff. I don't know what safe feels
Mm.
like.
Mm.
And also, I feel safer than having crosses burnt. I haven't had a cross burnt out outside of my house.
Right.
And if slaves that were meeting in the dark woods that were never allowed to to read a book or to
Mm.
write, and they had resilience, I can have that resilience. And one thing they want is like, do not let them take away your hope and your joy. I had a debate with another Black woman about their hope and joy. So I'm going to say both because I feel some type of way about joy, but don't let them take that. Don't let them take it away from you because
Yeah.
that's what they want. My ancestors had dreams. They had hope. They had joy. They celebrated in the face of being slaughtered and being abused and beaten and their children being taken away from them. We can do this. We can
Yeah.
do this. It's going to take time, but we can do this. Think about the Montgomery bus boycott. Think
Mm.
about the freedom bus. Like they got killed
Yeah.
and they still showed up. They got
Yeah.
beaten when they just sat at counters and they still showed up. They are just as diabolical as they were then, but they're more manipulative about it. So, we're not gonna see it. Well, I can't say we're not gonna see it because we saw Alex Preddy and Renee Good slaughtered.
Yeah.
We have an obligation, and people have done it before us, and if they can do it, we can do it. We have more tools, we have the internet, we can sit here and talk, right, we're doing right now, and get out to hundreds of thousands of
That's right.
people. We can do that. So a man devoid of hope and conscious of being has ceased to belong to the future. The moment you give up that hope, you give up the future that you want. And that is what I would tell people. And to take care of yourself. Self-care is an act of political warfare.
Amen. And I love all of that. And just for people that maybe were feeling a little hopeless yesterday, I want to give you a little piece of good news. There was a piece that I did around what was going on with our food supply, and Bayer was basically trying to gain immunity so they would never be once again held liable for poisoning people with the pesticides that they put on our food supply. And this was a big story the last couple of days. And I'm looking at an article from Food and Water Watch, and it says Bayer's losing game to dodge accountability for glyphosate. And what's interesting about this is glyphosate is it's a carcinogenic chemical. They're spraying it all over our food, and they're trying to get away with it. But it's happening that it looks like in the courts, they're not going to be able to dodge that immunity. And that seems to have been stripped from the most recent bill. That's a big deal, you guys. This was an issue that I was not convinced, Sarah, that we were going to win on, but people were really loud. They contacted their representatives. They made a big stink about it online, and something good came out of it. And to your point, it took that audacity of hope and that ability to be in the moment resilience and say, hey, this is not okay, and we're not going to take this lying down. And something did shift. So that's a real-time example of exactly what you just said. And the more of us that come together and stand in solidarity, even if the issues that I face are not the same issues that you face, we're facing them together, right? That is how we all end up in a better tomorrow. And I so appreciate you taking time. If people want to learn more about what's going on with the May Day events and, of course, the workers over Billionaires scheduled marches, etc., and events, can you please share where they can go?
Yeah, you can go to maydaystrong.org, MAYDAYSTRONG.org. You can also follow 5051, that's 50, FIFTY, dot ONE. I always like to say zero, NE, to get to our website, and also 5051 on all of our Facebooks and Mayday Strong, our Facebook, our Instagram, and Twitter. I'm pretty sure we have Twitter. I don't start social media. I'm the on the ground organizer. But you can definitely follow that. And to your point, I didn't know about that fight, but it made me think this is when you can show people that it's impacting not just you, it's impacting everyone around you,
That's right.
no matter your demographic, no matter if you're a Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter any of those things, right? If you can show and you can move together, there's change to be had.
Mhm.
A lot of people are coming over towards us and they're like, "Hey, actually, I regret this. I didn't expect
Mhm.
it." And
Mm.
you have to remember you're fighting for your opposition too, and celebrating small wins. We always
Amen.
forget that. We forget to do that. Uplift
That's
those
right.
small on your Facebook, on your Instagram, talk about them just as much as you're talking about all the things they're doing to flood the zone.
Absolutely. And if you haven't yet, you guys, please make sure to subscribe to Facts Over Fear and to Sarah Parker's handle here as well. If you just came late, don't worry. I'm going to be reposting this very shortly after we jump off, so that everybody can find out what's going on for tomorrow and make sure that they can participate. And once again, you may not be able to do everything, but we can all do something. Sarah, thank you for joining me. I really would love to have you back on and talk more specifically on some of the issues that you and I were kind of nudging up against earlier in the conversation. So I look forward to more of that.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know anytime. Thank you so much, and thank you for the viewers.
Oh, wonderful. And until next time, everyone, as always, please take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, everybody.